I'm Patricia Fox, and I'm here to talk about the development of the Avian Health Cooperative Agreement. Just a few tips about the new format of the Objectives Workbook. All of the objectives will be listed in the workbook. It will then be completed quarterly and will not only serve as the cooperative agreement template, but also serve as the narrative portion of the quarterly report. So each objective will be listed and then the progress will be listed quarterly on the same workbook. The workbook is locked and people may need some more room, especially during the surveillance objectives. There's only 2 or 3 lines there. They can drop down to the bottom and continue listing surveillance or other activities. I would ask that they please use the objective number so I know which objectives the activities refer back to. Remember that we do have an avian testing surveillance workbook as well, and that is the Excel workbook that you have been submitting quarterly for the past few years. We're still using that. But we've added the avian testing goals sheet as a part of that workbook, and you'll fill that out as a part of your agreement package. So that's going to list the testing goals, and then just like the workbook for the agreement, we'll fill that in quarterly, and it will automatically sum on the last sheet so that everybody at one glance can look at the progress on the surveillance testing goals. Remember, for the avian surveillance workbook, the quarterly reports, this must be submitted in the Excel format to allow for the report to be compiled nationally. There are six objectives in the avian surveillance section. Objective 1 is avian surveillance. This includes only activities that result in the collection of diagnostic samples. So objective 1 should only be those activities where folks are actually going out and collecting samples, or they are distributing mailers for samples to be mailed to the lab, things like that. We do ask that the NPIP and non-NPIP activities are listed separately. What we're trying to do is look at commercial surveillance and then also look at the live bird market and backyard surveillance separately. That helps us to determine funding levels as well as how national surveillance goals might be tweaked in the future. And again, we ask that you list a measurable objective. That is a number of trips, a number of mailers, a number of investigations. For the surveillance objective, we ask that you not do the number of tests as the goal. Those will be listed under diagnostics in objective 3. So this is actual activities, folks going out to a fair or show and collecting samples, folks going to a live bird market and collecting samples, objectives such as those. So remember that surveillance is the cornerstone of this agreement. What we're looking for is avian influenza surveillance testing. So these objectives, along with the diagnostic testing associated with them in objective 3, should be the majority of the work activities supported by the agreement. Objective 2 is the NPIP, live bird marketing system, and general avian health support activities. This is where the other activities that do not result in diagnostic samples should be listed. So if you're just going to go out and do an audit or an inspection or a record check or a post-cleaning check and you're not taking samples, those activities should go under Objective 2. Again, we would still like NPIP and non-NPIP activities listed separately. This is also the objective under which your equipment and supplies will be listed. And as a reminder, as in previous work plans, if laboratory equipment over $5,000 is being requested, be sure to include the laboratory equipment request form, which is attached to the cooperative agreement guide. And again, measurable objectives, the number of trips, hours associated with data entry or record keeping, 9-4 forms, things like that. Objective 3 is the laboratory diagnostics. And a few reminders, all tests should be listed as a cost per test, inclusive of all costs beginning when the sample arrives at the laboratory to when the results are reported out. There are maximum test costs. We don't publish these because then everybody's going to use maximum. But a lab may, in limited circumstances, exceed the maximum if there's a published rate charged to other clients associated with that laboratory. If that's the case, please note this in the workbook, and if there are any questions about that, people can always ask me. Another reminder is we do not reimburse laboratories for conducting antigen capture immunoassay or ACIA testing. That is a field level test. We will allow the test kits to be ordered under supplies, but those tests should be conducted in the field by field personnel, and so therefore we do not reimburse laboratories for conducting them. There's a lot of confusion every year about diagnostic necropsies. Very often the necropsy charge has a lot of other testing and associated activities in the charge. But in order to make sure that your diagnostic necropsy charge does not exceed the maximum, we ask that that charge should only include the gross examination, and additional testing charges should be listed separately in Objective 3. That way, the necropsies can still get done, and we don't have a problem with going over the maximum amount when there are other tests involved in that. And again, the number of tests listed in Objective 3 should match those entered on the avian testing goal sheet or the cover sheet of the Avian Surveillance workbook. And that's going to be your quarterly report as well. Objective 4, education and outreach. Again, measurable objectives, the number of trips, the number of events, the number of people that participated in events, and a few reminders that all educational materials must be approved by LPA, so please allow 2 weeks for this approval. Don't have anything printed up, and don't expect the cooperative agreement folks or the poultry health folks to be able to get back to you in a day or two to approve flyers or anything like that. And a reminder that promotional materials, including squishy animals or magnets or calendars, are not allowable with agreement funds. If the states want to do that, they're going to have to use their own funds to support those activities. Next, Objective 5 is travel and training. A few reminders there. No more than 2 participants per meeting per cooperator. So that's across the umbrella and ADT agreements. But if your state has 2 different cooperators with 2 different avian health cooperative agreements, such as the Department of Agriculture and an official state agency, they each get 2. So it's per cooperator. Make sure that you include your NPIP required training for your laboratory diagnosticians here under travel and training and not under diagnostics. That should be for tests only. And if travel is being funded across commodities, please list the estimated percentage that's being provided by the avian health funding. So you may have USAHA that's being funded across a couple of commodities. Please let us know what percentage of that travel is being funded by avian health. And finally, preparedness and response. We do require that the initial state response and containment plans are reviewed annually. These are currently undergoing a large update, so you may have a lot more work on these going on this year. But make sure that the review and exercise of the initial state response and containment plan is a goal of your state cooperator, even if it's not listed in their cooperative agreement. A reminder that no more than 72 hours of PPE is to be purchased. Make sure that you list the quarterly maintenance and exercise of population equipment as well as the associated contracts. Many of the foamers and such have yearly maintenance contracts associated with them. Also a reminder that preparedness and response assets and the cost to maintain and store them needs to be of a reasonable quantity. We can't provide funding for all of the preparedness and response assets of the state because we have the National Veterinary Stockpile, and those assets can be deployed very quickly, and that is where veterinary services has a very large influx of funding as well, so we can't fund a stockpile in every state. So that's it for the development of the Avian Health Cooperative Agreement, and if you have any questions, you can always call me or your cooperative agreement specialist.